a pastor, a 6-year pattern of stalking, caught on camera breaking into his victim's home, convicted of burglary and stalking with an 11-year sentence, and he'll only serve 4 months behind bars. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about what happens when the church protects the predator instead of the prey. And if you've ever trusted a spiritual leader with your deepest struggles, you need to hear this. Because Marie Columna's nightmare could have been prevented, let me paint you a picture. November 2023, Lynchburg, Virginia. Marie Columna is out of town with her 2 children when her phone lights up with a security alert. Someone is in her home. She opens the app, and the face staring back at her through her own security camera is someone she knows. Someone she once trusted with her spiritual well-being. Her former pastor, Sergio Guardia. Can you imagine that moment? You're away from home, your children are with you, and you realize that the man who once counseled you, who prayed with you, who stood in the pulpit and preached about holiness, is walking through your house uninvited. In an interview, Marie said, "But here's what makes this exponentially worse, and I need you to stay with me because this detail changes everything." This wasn't the first time, not even close. Marie says Sergio Guardia had been stalking her for 6 years. 6 years. Let that sink in. It started after her divorce was finalized. Guardia was her pastor at Thomas Road Baptist Church's Spanish-language congregation, one of the largest and most influential churches in America, founded by Jerry Falwell. Marie said Guardia would come to her house, claiming he wanted to help. But his help didn't feel like help. It felt wrong. It made her uncomfortable. So uncomfortable that she left the church in 2016 and cut off all contact with him and his family. But he didn't stop. For 6 years, this pattern continued. And here's the question that should haunt every church leader watching this. How does a pastor stalk someone for 6 years without the church noticing? Or worse, did they notice and do nothing? Marie expressed her frustration clearly. Their response towards me was negative. They were supportive of him. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before we continue. What does it say about a church when they support the accused pastor over the victim? We'll come back to that, but first, November 10th and 11th, 2023. Those are the dates that changed everything. While Marie and her children were out of town, Guardia broke into her home. Not once, but twice. 2 separate occasions, 2 separate burglaries. And this time, unlike the previous 6 years of behavior, she had proof. Video evidence. She told reporters,
The most dominant thought was just being so confused. Why was he in my house? In fact, it took me a really, really long time to stop asking myself that question, and I still don't have the answer.
think about that. Even after everything, even after the trial, she still doesn't know what he wanted. What was he looking for? What were his intentions? And honestly, that might be the most terrifying part, because our minds can imagine all sorts of scenarios, each one worse than the last. March 2025. A jury heard the evidence. They saw the videos. They heard Marie's testimony about 6 years of stalking. They heard about the pattern of behavior that escalated from unwanted help to breaking and entering. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. 2 counts of burglary, 1 count of stalking, an 11-year sentence. Finally, justice. Finally, accountability. Finally, a church leader is facing consequences for predatory behavior. Or so it seemed. But what happened next in that courtroom should outrage every person of faith watching this video. October 17th, 2025. Sentencing day. The judge had guidelines suggesting probation. Just probation. For breaking into someone's home twice. For 6 years of stalking. For abusing his position as a spiritual authority. But to his credit, the judge said the evidence and the impact on Marie's life warranted going beyond those guidelines. He gave Guardia 4 months behind bars. 4 months. Let me break this down. An 11-year sentence with nearly all of it suspended. Now, before you click away thinking I'm being too harsh, listen to what Marie herself said.
I felt so much relief when that verdict was read. I have never felt such a relief and such validation. I've had a good support group of men and women And I felt validated by some people and their statements and their support and everything, and really believing me. But when 12 jurors all agreed that he was guilty of each crime, it's just like they believed me.
Marie felt validated. And I'm genuinely glad she found some peace in that courtroom. She deserves that validation after 6 years of being gaslit, ignored, and unsupported by her church community. But here's what we need to grapple with, especially those of us over 40 who grew up in a church culture that often swept these things under the rug. Is 4 months adequate accountability for a pastor who stalked a vulnerable divorced woman for 6 years and broke into her home twice? The judge acknowledged it was a pattern, not an isolated incident, not a momentary lapse in judgment, a pattern. And this brings us to the deeper issue that every Christian, every church member, every person who sits in a pew needs to understand. This case isn't just about one predatory pastor. It's about a system that protects the powerful and silences the vulnerable. Marie said the church's response to her was negative. They supported him, not her. Let me ask you, how many Marie Columbas are sitting in churches right now, knowing something is wrong, feeling uncomfortable with how a pastor or leader is treating them, but staying silent because they've watched what happens to women who speak up? How many ABUC survivors have we lost from our faith communities because we chose to protect institutions and reputations over people and truth? But here's where I want to end with hope, because Marie's courage in coming forward is exactly what we need more of. Marie got her power back. She hasn't felt safe in her home since the break-in. That's the real cost of this 4-month sentence. Marie's sentence is much longer. She lives with the trauma every day, but she's speaking out so other victims know they can too. She's proving that even when churches fail us, even when sentences seem inadequate, even when the process takes years, truth still matters. Justice, even imperfect justice, still matters. And your voice, if you're a survivor watching this, still matters. This case should never have gotten to this point. But now that it has, we have a choice. We can let it be just another story that fades from the headlines, or we can let it be a catalyst for change in how our churches handle ABUSC and accountability. The comment section is open. I want to hear from you. Have you experienced something similar in your church? Is 4 months adequate justice? What changes need to happen in how churches handle these situations? And if this video resonated with you, please share it. Not for the algorithm, but because someone in your life might need to hear Marie's story. Someone might need permission to speak their truth. Hit that subscribe button if you want more honest conversations about faith, justice, and accountability in the church. So let me leave you with her impact statement that she was not allowed to read, but later shared it online.
I am the victim of a criminal court case, and despite multiple requests to read my victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing today, I somehow missed my opportunity to read it. So I decided to share it in a different way. I was going to take a picture of it, but I decided to read it because it would have more of an impact. So this is my victim impact statement. My name is Marie Columna, and I'm the victim in the case against Sergio Guardia, who has been convicted of stalking and breaking into my home on 2 separate occasions. I'm submitting this statement to share the profound and lasting impact his crimes have had on my life, my children, and our sense of safety. No written statement can capture the full weight of what Sergio has done. My trial testimony offered only a glimpse of the abuse I endured, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. The harm continues not only from his actions, but from the deliberate protection he has received from Thomas Road Baptist Church. For years, Sergio used his position of power and spiritual authority to psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually abuse me. He harassed me, monitored my activities, stalked me, assaulted me, and ultimately broke into my home on multiple occasions. Sergio displayed a consistent pattern of manipulation and exploitation. He weaponized my past trauma. He saw it as opportunity to exploit. And he did so while cloaked in religious authority, which made his abuse even more damaging. He weaponized my trust, violated my privacy, and ignored every boundary that I set. To him, my boundaries were not no's, they were challenges to overcome. He used church networks, mutual connections, and his pastoral role to entangle himself deeper into my life. What appeared to be generosity or ministry was in fact a calculated pattern of coercive control and spiritual exploitation. These were not isolated incidents. His actions were a part of a much larger pattern of coercive control and abuse enabled by systems within the church that has protected him. In my attempt to feel safe, I moved multiple times, but no matter where I went, Sergio's obsession followed me. When I discovered him inside my home in November 2023, several years after last seeing him, I realized that his behavior had escalated beyond stalking into direct physical danger. I recognized that my kids and I were, in fact, in very real danger. Both nights that he broke in, he entered through my 16-year-old daughter's bedroom. On the second night, video evidence shows that he was in her room for nearly 10 minutes. He never went upstairs. It chills me to my core to imagine what could have happened if we had been home, or if I had not discovered the footage. His actions crossed every possible line. He was not only violating my safety, he was invading and violating my daughter's safety. Sergio's crimes shattered our sense of peace and safety. I live with PTSD and have experienced both anxiety and depression. I constantly checked my home for hidden cameras. I struggled to sleep, to focus at work, and to be fully present for my children. The financial strain has been significant with therapy costs, lost wages from court preparations and appearances, and the mental toll of ongoing trauma. The impact on my children, especially my daughter, has been devastating. He broke into her bedroom, her safe space, her childhood sanctuary. That room had been a safe space, a place for constant sleepovers and core childhood memories. Our house was the go-to spot for all the kids' friends. It was always full of life and energy because of them. We immediately moved her room upstairs after we found out Sergio broke into her bedroom. She lost not only the room itself, but the sense of safety, freedom, and innocence it once gave her. Her senior year, which should have been a time of excitement and celebration, was overshadowed by fear, confusion, and trauma. As a single mother, my ability to provide stability was compromised, and I still wonder if her friends were ever truly safe in our home, and that question haunts me. The harm did not end with Sergio's conviction. Thomas Road Baptist Church, the institution he served, has continued to protect and defend him. Instead of standing with victims, they chose silence, distortion, and public sympathy for the offender. After his conviction made national news, the church used its platform to portray him as a victim, misleading the congregation and diminishing the seriousness of his crimes. Their actions emboldened abusers and re-traumatized survivors. This is not only about one man's behavior, it's about a system that allowed abuse to thrive under the cover of faith. Sergio has never shown any remorse. Any. Instead, he has reframed his crimes as injustices against himself, manipulated those around him, and continued to seek control through sympathy and denial. A man who refuses to take responsibility does not stop, he adapts. He finds new ways to exert control and reestablish power. That makes him a continuing danger not only to me and my children, but to any person he can influence or deceive in the future. I know there will be letters and testimonies describing Sergio as a loving husband, father, and pastor. His supporters will describe him as a man of God that did good deeds and incredible work in the ministry. They do not change the facts established in this court. The character descriptions do not erase his pattern of abuse, the crimes he has committed, and the harm done to me and my children and other victims. I recognize that Sergio's wife may feel pain and fear as her husband faces sentencing. I empathize with any spouse in that situation, but sentencing is not about minimizing discomfort for the offender's family. It's about justice, accountability, and public safety. Sentencing must reflect the ongoing danger he poses, not the convenience of sparing his family the consequences. I trust that your decision will be based on truth of what was done and not on the selective stories told by people who... It is about injustice. It's about justice, accountability, and public safety. I trust that your decision will be based on truth done and not on selective stories told by people who did not live through the danger, the fear, and the impact of these crimes. I also want to emphasize that Sergio's behavior toward me over the past 10 years was intentional and calculated, not a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of grooming, control, and escalation. He groomed me through helpful favors. He isolated me by discrediting my friends. He tested and violated my boundaries, escalating into sexual assault, stalking, and home invasion. He gaslit me into silence and confusion, and he used his position as a pastor to spiritually and emotionally abuse me in an attempt to destroy my identity and gain control of me. Sergio's actions represent a clear and ongoing danger to others. He has shown no remorse and continues to manipulate those around him. The ongoing involvement of third parties who have continued to monitor, intimidate me, and intimidate me on his behalf demonstrate that threat to my safety has not ended, even after his conviction. Your Honor, I respectfully ask the court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law, reflecting the deliberate, escalating, and predatory nature of these crimes, to extend the protective order to the maximum duration allowed by law to ensure long-term safety for me and my children given the ongoing risk and history of escalation, to prohibit him, as part of sentencing and supervision, from serving in any pastoral, counseling, or leadership capacity that grants him authority or access to vulnerable individuals in order to ensure public safety and prevent future abuse, and to require post-release supervision with active monitoring. By holding Sergio fully accountable, this court will send a clear and necessary message. Abuse committed under the cover of religion will not be tolerated, not in our homes, not in our churches, and not in our communities. Sergio sought to shatter my safety, destroy my credibility, and take control of my life. He failed, but the damage he caused is lasting and deep. I speak today not only for myself, but for every survivor who has been silenced, dismissed, and discredited, especially when their abusers were protected by their position of authority. I ask this court to look beyond personal endorsements and to focus on the truth, the evidence, and the lasting impact of these crimes. Thank you, Your Honor, for hearing my voice. Sincerely, me. Thanks for listening. Every victim deserves to be heard.